Sean McVay's doghouse claims another tenant. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Starting at quarterback in Week 12 for the Panthers is Sam Darnold. Let me zoom out there a little bit. There we go. That's better. Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic is an overused cliche. Is that redundant? Overused cliche? Anyway, but man, does it fit here? PJ Walker is still dealing with a high ankle sprain, and Baker Mayfield is still dealing with being terrible. Really, all that we care about for fantasy is what this means for DJ Moore, and given it's now Week 12, it's still looking like a lost season for Carolina's star receiver. By the way, he also has a matchup with Patrick Surtain this week, in case you're wondering how things are going to go. Moore's 68.1 yards per game and 7.1 yards per target in 2021 were the worst of his career as a full-time starter until this season, when he's dipped to career lows across the board. Now, if you're expecting Darnold to be Moore's savior, you're mistaken. But can it be worse than it already has been? I've said no too much in this situation to say it again, but I have to imagine it won't be, right? In our first running back spot today, we have a new free agent. Yes, I literally used that headline yesterday, but it's true again. In Week 11, Darrell Henderson started for the Rams. That's good. He played every snap on the opening drive. Yes. He averaged 4.5 yards per carry. My God, yes. And then he never played a single snap the rest of the way. He finished with 2 carries for 9 yards in the Rams' loss to the Saints and was effectively benched for reasons unknown to us. And there was no reported injury. And then on Tuesday, the Rams cut Henderson. There is clearly something going on behind the scenes, and a tweet from Henderson after the release containing some emojis didn't exactly suggest he was unhappy. Now, the Rams may have lost Matthew Stafford to another concussion, and coach Sean McVay seems completely lost for ideas on what to do here. But what was clear is Hendo ran well behind Cam Akers and Kyron Williams, who was the passing down back. By the way, this is from the Athletic's Jordan Rodriguez, whose Rams coverage is perhaps the best in the league from any team's beat reporter. Quote, when the Rams traded up to draft Kyron Williams this spring, the sentiment behind the scenes is that he would take over Henderson's role at some point. The staff is high on Williams, who was hurt throughout the first part of the season. Didn't see an in-season cut coming, though. It's been one of those years for the Rams. Henderson will almost certainly latch on with another team, so in deeper leagues, he might be worth a hold. In our second running back spot, we have what's left behind in Denver. Yes, that's because the Broncos cut Melvin Gordon, who went unclaimed on waivers, by the way, on Monday. We know about Latavius Murray, who was a top waiver pickup this week, but the timing on Gordon's release was a bit peculiar considering Chase Edmonds suffered a high ankle injury in the same contest, which is likely going to cost him a chunk of time. The Broncos must have some confidence in veteran Marlon Mack's ability to serve as a backup to Latavius Murray for now, but the move also suggests that Mike Boone could be close to a return from his high ankle injury. Per Mike Kliss, Boone could jump back into the mix as early as next week, with the Broncos able to open his 21-day practice window after their game against the Panthers in Week 12. Boone's the more intriguing option here of him and Marlon Mack, with his career 5.5 yards per carry average on just 90 carries, and he's clearly the best remaining receiver of the group. That's notable because Denver's running backs have seen the 5th most targets at the position with the 2nd highest target share. So Boone could carve out enough standalone value in PPR formats once he gets healthy. Go check if he's available. I'd pick him up. In our first wide receiver spot, we have someone coming back to aid your playoff push. Potentially. The Bengals' Jamar Chase could go from using crutches before Week 11 to returning to the field in Week 12 against the Titans as he nears the end of his recovery from a hip injury that's kept him out of the lineup over the last 3 games. The Bengals avoided putting Chase on the injured reserve, which would have definitely kept him out of the lineup this week against Tennessee. And it's clear he'll be back either this week or next week, barring a setback. On Tuesday, Coach Zach Taylor called him truly day-to-day, and it's something we'll have to monitor closely for the next couple weeks. Chase was really heating up with Joe Burrow before his injury, hanging 32.2 fantasy points in Week 7 and 30.0 fantasy points in Week 8 in his last 2 games before being shut down. At wide receiver 2, the Cardinals could really use Hollywood Brown. It looked like Arizona was taking the prudent approach with their star receiver, but it's also possible their timeline has changed on him, given that they potentially lost both Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch to injuries on Monday night. Rondale Moore suffering a groin. You saw him play, 2 snaps, and then he was out. And Greg Dortch going for an MRI on his thumb. Brown returned to practice last week from the foot injury that's cost him about 2 months. And now Coach Cliff Kingsbury said on Tuesday that, quote, "We'll know early this week if Brown can play in Week 12. Now, it's notable that the Cardinals go on bye in Week 13, but if they're already near dead playoff hopes are to stay alive for a little bit longer, they may well need Brown out there. He was a top 10 fantasy wide receiver before going down, and while that was before DeAndre Hopkins returned, the Cardinals have since suffered injuries to Moore, Dortch, and Zach Ertz. There are plenty of targets to go around here for Marquise Brown if he does return this week. Now in our flex spot, it's Zach Wilson, and maybe not for much longer. It's looking like Wilson may have played and talked himself into a benching, and it would be justifiable. In terms of making a switch to Mike White or Joe Flacco from the second-year quarterback, Coach Robert Saleh said he's, quote, keeping everything on the table over the next couple of days, and that, quote, the quarterback is part of a pile of stuff that's being talked about. Zach Wilson was, 22 years old and was handed the keys to $1 billion business. And now he's part of a pile of stuff. I'm going off the cuff here, by the way. I didn't actually write a script. We know Zach Wilson said after the game against the Patriots, in which he went 7 of 22, that he does not feel bad about letting the defense down. He said, no, I did not let the defense down. And also he said, well, the reason I was 7 of 22 is because, well, we didn't throw deep, and neither did the Patriots because it was windy. Yeah, that's ignoring the fact, Zach, that Mac Jones was 23 of 27 in the same game. Because, he threw it short where the ball should be easy to complete. Yeah. Zach Wilson's thrown for fewer than 150 yards in 4 consecutive starts, okay? With the exception, of when he threw for 330 against the Patriots last time out, but that also included 3 interceptions. Look, this is very clearly not a mature young man. When I was 23, I wasn't mature either, nor did I have the keys to $1 billion organization. But I would like to think that if I had the keys to $1 billion organization, I would have shaped up really quick. But look, Zach Wilson, I don't know how Robert Saleh could look at this locker room, a 6-4 team that might have one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the entire league, and say, you know what? We got to let Zach play through this. Those guys know what Joe Flacco did early in the season. They know what Mike White might be able to do. Is that writing the epitaph of Zach Wilson's career? Maybe not. Typically, guys don't come back from being benched in an embarrassing fashion the way he probably should be. But man, if there is any chance for this Jets team to make noise and make the playoffs, they've got to move on from Wilson. Our guy Greg Cosell called him a couple of weeks ago. He's a tough watch, John. And when Greg Cosell calls you a tough watch, it's hard to come back from that. I'm Joe Dolan, and this has been the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. I'm going to break some news to Ben Kukanis right here. We are not going to do this show on Thanksgiving morning. We're going to let everybody enjoy their holiday. I will be in our subscriber Discord at fantasypoints.com answering Thanksgiving Turkey Day questions tomorrow morning. I know everybody's going to have some start sit. It's a day where I don't consider myself a DFS expert. I leave that to Scott Barrett and Grant Barfield and Jake Tribby and Darren Manser and all our guys over there. But I love to play the Turkey Day slate. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be tuning in at fantasypoints.com to the Cashing Points live stream and John Hansen and Greg Cosell, where they talk about how Zach Wilson's a tough watch on the Matchup Points live stream. Those are tonight, 4 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Eastern at fantasypoints.com for subscribers. Go to fantasypoints.com, use code lineup22, and get in so you can prepare for Thanksgiving. Who would rather do their Thanksgiving Eve drinking with anyone else but Kaplan and Cosell? 6 p.m. tonight. You can do it. I'll see you there, everybody, and I'll talk to you guys Friday.